time again, you have heard pollsters and, of course, Democrat strategists and Kamala Harris herself admit that she is struggling with Black male voters. But now it's not just Black male voters, because earlier this morning, Morning Consult pollsters appeared on MSNBC and explained that she is now struggling with another population of men. And I want to hear your take on this, guys. I want to hear what you got to say. Let's go ahead and bring in this clip here, because I want to see if they're going to, go off on her the way that they did, go off on this group the way that they did with Black men. Let's dive in.
A tight race in every battleground state. In the latest survey, Vice President Kamala Harris holds leads within the margin of error in every swing state but Georgia, where she and former President Donald Trump are tied in this poll. Harris leads by 3 points among likely voters in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She's also up by 7 points in Nevada, by 2 points in North Carolina, and by 5 points in Pennsylvania.
And the one race that she's tied in, Georgia, there's the latest Fox News survey of likely voters in Georgia. That has Harris ahead of Trump by 3 percentage points. Mm-hmm. That, too, of course, falls within the margin of error. So if you look at all of these polls, it's a tie. And you talk to both campaigns, they will tell you it's a tie. Gene, the Harris campaign, it's very interesting. They're sending out messages. You can tell the specter of the Great Pumpkin 2006 continues to rise over the pumpkin patch, and nobody is saying, we feel good. So like, well, I don't know.
I don't know.
But we finally, we had a long cross-examination last night, Mika and I, with a member, and after about 30 minutes of breaking it down, a couple of drinks, they finally broke and said, okay, we feel okay. All right. But nobody's going to say that. All right.
How many drinks did it take?
For them, two or three in, and a spotlight on top of them. It was really, chained to a chair, a metal chair. But there is, it is. Please come up and have a drink with us tonight.
Thursday night in Washington.
But seriously, they are so scared. Because what happened in 2016 when everybody was mocking Donald Trump?
Who doesn't have PTSD?
I know. So you talk to somebody in the Harris campaign, and you have to go deep to find somebody who admit polls are kind of breaking in our favor. And here shows again, except for one poll, which I won't name, the trend lines have been fairly positive over the past month.
No, they've been positive.
But it's still a tie.
If you look at the trend lines, you'd rather be Kamala Harris right now than Donald Trump. If you want to win this election, right? Because you look at the long-term trend line and you see that it has crept up, and then she's getting awfully close to that 50%.
Right.
And Trump is basically steady. He's basically got 45, 46%. Right.
I just want to chime in here and remind everybody that Hillary Clinton was sitting at 52%, I believe, around this time when she was running against Donald Trump, and she lost. So see, when he says that 50%, he's talking about the popular vote. The Electoral College is a different thing.
Punto, that's it. But he's overperformed his polls in some prior elections. Everybody remembers 2016. Nobody is going to feel confident, and no one should feel confident, because it's going to be a turnout election. I mean, if Harris gets her voters to the polls, they've got the machine out there to do it. But if they get their voters to the polls, then that's a very different story from if they don't.
Right.
So.
And I don't even believe Georgia. I'll be honest with you. I don't even believe that Georgia is tied. I think Georgia's going to Donald Trump. I think some of these, again, it's a poll that was conducted by Morning Consult. So it is what it is. But I just want to remind everybody, we had a similar situation with Hillary, and actually Hillary was performing better than Kamala was. So let me see if I can fast forward a little bit.
And Elizabeth, you look at these numbers, obviously in the Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll, Harris is doing well. The trend lines are very positive. You go back to before she was in the race and it was Joe Biden, you started to see states like Minnesota Virginia, New Hampshire suddenly get uncomfortably close. Those races are no longer close. So Trump's basically turning the telling off. So it really has. For those that say, oh, it would be the same with Biden, things have dramatically shifted.
A major difference. And as Jane says, the trend line is up for her consistently. We have polling showing that she is doing better on the economy than she was even 2 weeks ago, that she is beginning to catch up with Trump on her perceptions of who would be better for the economy. She's out there talking about what a rich guy he is and how she's, that she's a capitalist for the middle class. Her speech recently where she made clear, as he is saying, I'm not a Marxist, I'm not a socialist, I'm not a communist, I'm a capitalist, trying to, show friendliness towards business. She's got, a lot of these tax cuts, a lot of these plans for the young people, $25,000. I don't know where she's going to get the money for this, but she's talking about this $25,000 credit for first-time home buyers, $50,000 for startup new businesses. So she's beginning to make inroads there. But I should say, yes, there's a lot of concern about these hidden Trump voters. I can tell you that there are more newly registered Republicans this cycle than there are registered Democrats.
Did everybody hear that? So that's important to take in. She said there's more registered Republicans than there are Democrats. Another thing I was going to bring up too, when she mentions the hidden Trump voters, the reason why they're so-called hidden is because for whatever reason, Trump voters are underpolled. So you always have to take that in consideration when you're looking at this. Again, comparing this to Joe Biden, when Biden ran, Biden was also way ahead of Kamala Harris. So keep that in mind. This is what I'm trying to tell people. She is underperforming when you compare her to Joe Biden and you compare her to Hillary Clinton.
Despite the stories we've been running about all the college kids signing up, and there is and Trump is doing in that group. He's doing better among younger men of color than you would expect.
Right. And Katty, the one thing that we have heard from the Harris campaign.
When she says, then you would expect, why would you expect? See, that goes to show you again how these pollsters and these bougie, peeps, how they put us into boxes and they put us into certain categories where they think we should be. She's like, well, he's doing better with younger men of color than you would expect. What do you expect from younger men of color? They're not like their parents' generation. They're not like their grandparents' generation. I can tell you that much.
Campaign, even those that will be cautiously optimistic, is the Pennsylvania is the new Ohio. Pennsylvania has had a surge in Republican registration over the past 4 years. So they still believe they can and will win Pennsylvania, but they feel good about Michigan. They feel good about Wisconsin, relatively good. It may be a landslide. Maybe they'll win by a full percentage point in both of those states. But in Pennsylvania, they know it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be a fight because she's doing better, much better among women and most young voters, but older white men, just like people thought after Biden left the race. More of a challenge, pulling them to vote against Trump again.
Yeah, I mean, older white men and actually to younger white men too, also a bit of a challenge. I mean,
everybody heard that? So he said older white men, because they were, polling better for Biden or better for Donald Trump. Then she added also younger white men. So is Roland Martin and all the Democrat shills, are you guys going to come after white men the same way you attacked black men for not supporting Kamala Harris? Are you going to why do you guys think they had those groups pop up called white dudes for Kamala, Caribbeans for Kamala, white women for Kamala, like all these different South Asian people for Kamala? Why do you guys think they had those groups form and pop up? Because they were like, oh, let's try to see if we can get our demographics over and because they already knew she was going to struggle with the Muslim voters, which I'll get to that in just a second. We knew she was going to struggle there because of the genocide. But now they are telling you she is struggling with young white men as well. So I'm just waiting. I'm just sit back. I'm waiting for you guys all you Democrat strategists to point fingers at the white guys, the young white guys who are also not going to support Kamala Harris the same way you went after black men.
That number they'll like a lot, up +5 in Pennsylvania, because you're right. It's the new Ohio. It's the new Florida. It's the state where they see they have the most problems. And of course, then either the concern or the upside, depending on how you look at this from the Harris campaign's point of view, is that Wisconsin people think will break the same way. That's what they've done traditionally ever since 1980. I think there's one exception. And so if they lose Pennsylvania, what would that then mean for Wisconsin and Michigan? If they win Wisconsin and Michigan, does that mean they're going to win Pennsylvania? But that's why they're putting so much resources into that. But it's men. I mean, I think the real struggle for the Harris campaign is young men, older men, men of color, white men, and they are doing all they can. You can see, I think,
all men, honey. All men, honey. Not just black men, not just men of color, not just older white men. What did the pollster just tell you? Men. That's why she's trying to target women. That's why her and Oprah did the thing. And there was a lot of focus on women and what women want and all that kind of stuff, because she's struggling with all men. Now, there may be some men that don't support having a female president. That does exist. It does happen. Some men they just feel more comfortable having a man run the country. There are some men that are like that. Do I think all of the men who don't support Kamala Harris are that way? No. It's her. She has a similar problem that Hillary Clinton had. The girl boss attitude. It's unattractive. And I've said this before. Like, for us chicks, right? It's like American Idol used to talk about this thing called the likability factor. And it's true. I know it's a talent show, but the reality is people actually have to like you. What? People have to like you. And I look back when Kamala snapped at those protesters and said, I'm speaking that girl boss attitude. It's unattractive. I remember when Hillary Clinton called the Trump supporters deplorables or something. What? Deranged people, right? She called people super predators or whatever. Like the snobby elitist attitude. And I get it. She keeps saying that she grew up middle class and all that. I get all that. But that doesn't change the way that people feel about you when they hear you speak and they see your attitude. Because the rule is this: Barack Obama and Joe Biden have been interrupted at rallies by protesters multiple times. And neither one of them responded to protesters the way that Kamala Harris did, the way that Hillary Clinton did. There is something to be said for that. It's her. So I can already hear it now, them saying, oh, it was the men. The men lost it for Kamala. Shame those damn men. How dare they? They're sexist. Get ready for it, guys, because it's coming. If she loses, they're going to blame men and they're going to blame Muslim voters. Because peep this, fam. When I talked to Butch and Jill the other day, here's what they said about the Muslim vote that the Democratic Party doesn't want you to know. It is very clear that there is a certain, segment of the Muslim voting community that has decided to support your campaign. And that is in the swing states where I've shown people those numbers. I want to hear a little bit more about maybe some of the internal polls that you've seen, if you can discuss it.
So just to be clear, the Muslim vote has been completely lost by the Democratic Party, and it is not coming back. So Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, as soon as I got on the team, took a meeting with Dalia Mugahed, who's done polling in the Muslim community for the last 10 years. She's now senior researcher, and she showed me the numbers. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, 3 swing states, which are essentially demographically, for the purposes of the African-American percentage of the population and the Muslim percentage of the population, they're the same state, okay, demographically. And in those 3 states together, 65% of the Muslims voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Joe Biden was polling at 12% in January 2024. they were dead. And I learned that on my first day on the campaign about a month ago. Well, if I knew that a month ago, they certainly knew that at that polling in January of 2024. They have known for 8 months that they cannot win any of the swing states that they need in order to win. They can't win them because they needed heavy majorities amongst the Muslim population just to carry those places. And that's why they've gone so heavy on the racial rhetoric and trying to get black numbers up, because they are trying to compensate for the wholesale exodus of Muslims from their voting bloc. And they seem ignorant of the fact.
So everybody get this? This is why they've been trying to target other groups, because I think they've kind of just given up on trying to get the Muslim voters because they saw the numbers.
That every time you raise every time you talk to the black community, you're also talking to the black Muslim community. And that black Muslim community is not coming along with this genocide no matter what. So that was January 2024. Now, fast forward, right? We saw CARE run a poll early in the process, where a national poll where first Jill and Kamala were polling at 29%, neck and neck. I've been on the campaign for maybe a week when this came out. Then Wisconsin and Arizona, swing states, and a third one that I'm forgetting. Now Jill is running ahead of Kamala. Well, Yakin Institute, good friends of mine, people that I know, I've seen their new polls that have not yet come out. They're going to come out this week. 53% of the Muslims are now going third party, with 80% of them coming to us now. Okay. 15% for Kamala, 4% for Trump. Okay. So this narrative that we are taking votes away from the Democrats and giving them to Trump, it is an effort to do two things. They're gaslighting us, one, but they're also scapegoating us. They want to blame the Muslims when they lose the election, because they've already lost the election. They cannot win the election. There is no path to victory for the Democrats. The polls that they're giving you, whatever they're telling you, they all know this. And that's the reason why they had AOC Pelosi come after us, attacking us. That's the reason why they had Kunta Keith Ellison. Literally, the week after he came up to me at Friday prayer on the north side of Minneapolis and wanted to, embrace me, man to man, black man to black man, Muslim to Muslim, then he's told by his Democrat handlers that he's got to put out a hit on Jill. So Massa say jump, Keith say how high, boss? How high you want me to jump? And so that's why they're doing it, because they already know that they have no path to victory.
Make sure you check out that full interview if you haven't seen it yet. That was published yesterday, but it's not just Butch. So I saw this interview earlier today. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. An interview with the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, which has, the largest Arab population in the country. This is also where Rashida Tlaib is from, this area as well. Basically trying to plead with him to convince his community to support Kamala Harris. And this is what I was trying to tell you. They know the numbers. They saw the numbers. Listen to this.
The point of the third parties that you mentioned, a recent Reuters poll showed that 40% of Arab and Muslim voters in Michigan are now backing the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein. And Michigan was really important to Joe Biden's victory in 2020. I mean, Michigan is one of those states that went to Trump in 2016. The fact that Biden was able to win Michigan by, 150,000 votes, not huge, given you're talking about millions of voters, was part of the reason that he is president now. But the fact is, Mr. Mayor, Jill Stein is not going to be president of the United States. That's just not going to happen. So is this move toward Jill Stein, is that a political strategy, or is that more a statement of anger? What is that?
Do you see the frustration in her voice? So she goes, obviously, Jill Stein is not going to be president. So vote for the people who are killing your people. Do you see this? Because they really do think that they own your vote. They don't. Hell, you ain't got to vote for anybody. You can say your ass at home if you wanted to. Now I say go out and vote, because also there's still ballot measures. A lot of you live in ballot initiative states, and so that's why I cover those as well. I say still go out and support the ballot initiatives. Don't forget about the people who are running on down ballot, those local races as well. But do you hear the desperation in her voice? Listen to what he says.
I agree. And I understand that come November, you really have one of two choices over who's going to win this election, be it Vice President Harris or former President Trump. I 100% understand the electoral politics that we have at play. From the individuals that I've spoken to are supporting a third party candidate. For them, they're trying to vote with their values and morals at the forefront. You know, they want a president who not only advocates for an assault weapons ban here in the States, but also ensures that we don't have cabinet members of the Israeli government passing out assault weapons to radical settlers, killing Palestinians each and every single day. They want to support a president who understands that we have to end mass shooting at schools, but also holds accountable a government that decimated every university across Gaza. You know, we care about universal healthcare, and we care about what's happening in Gaza. We care about ensuring a green new future and what's unfolding in Yemen. We care about centering worker and unions' rights, and also wanting to understand what's unfolding in Yemen. And we're looking for a presidential candidate who takes these values and applies them globally. And so I think that's what you're hearing from folks who are going towards a third party candidate, be it Stein or someone else. And that's really what they want. People want to be inspired to vote for something. They don't want the simple message that Donald Trump is awful, which he is. We understand what he represents. The Muslim ban, the annexation of the Golan Heights, elimination of all aid towards Palestinians during his term. We know exactly what he represents and what he would bring in the second term. But the fear tactic is not going to work. People want an inspirational reason to come out to the ballot come November.
This is a big message that I think everyone needs to hear, regardless if you're not supporting either, Trump or Kamala because of the Gaza issue or not. Because the reality is, I'm really tired of hearing what I need to vote against. And I've heard that this year. I heard it in 2020. I heard it in 2016. What happened to voting for what I'm for? And that's just like, I've heard the Donald Trump shit since 2016. It's 2024. And so for me, I'm like, I want something for my community. I want something for younger people. I want something for the Black community. I want us to get something for our vote. And that's not how it hasn't happened. Not as long as I can remember. So this is the problem that we run into. So I think everyone needs to hear that message. Now, watch this.
There's a group called the Uncommitted National Movement, which is a coalition of people who supported the idea of voting uncommitted in the primaries. The group claims to have about, 700,000 people who support it. And last week, the movement announced it won't endorse Kamala Harris, but they did urge supporters to vote against Trump and avoid third-party candidates. So what does that mean? I understand you don't speak for this group, but what does that mean?
Yeah, I can't speak to the thought process that went into the messaging behind the Uncommitted National Movement's announcement. What I can tell you, though, is when you have conversations at the doorsteps with residents here in the city of Dearborn, where my primary concern is, there's a difference in belief. Again, you have folks who very much do support the vice president. You have folks who very much are supporting a third party candidate. But I think the largest voting bloc are those who are not considering coming out to vote at all. And if we recall the 2016 election, it wasn't that Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by roughly 11,000 votes in Michigan in 2016. It was the fact that 80,000 voters went out and skipped the presidential question in total. And so I think that is the thing that we are trying to course correct for. The message that I have is I endorse you voting come November. At the very minimum, you must come out and you must cast your ballot, because standing on the sideline is not sufficient, and it's not going to get us anywhere. And so we have to demonstrate our power through our voice and our power through our vote.
The gentleman that I spoke to yesterday, we interviewed him at Revolutionary Blackout Network yesterday from Abandon Harris, and he's been on the show as well. He said that Abandon Harris is a separate movement from Uncommitted. They are absolutely not supporting Kamala at all, and they've been very vocal about it. He said that, he realizes how crazy and bad Trump is going to be on this issue as well. But then he said something else. He said, maybe then people will have more sympathy. Isn't that's sad? That in order to get more people to be sympathetic or riled up, it has to be Trump doing it. It just really made me think.
You are a Democrat yourself, but your position now is officially as mayor is a nonpartisan position, if I have that right? So that's the municipal elections are nonpartisan, as they are in lots of places. Okay, so on the one hand, you certainly have had the experience, I think, of having to ask people to support you, even if they don't agree with you about everything. I don't know if you've talked to the Harris campaign about this or if they've reached out to you, but how would you suggest that they talk to voters about that?
Talk to voters about it. So she didn't do her research, right? Because they have been begging Kamala Harris for the longest time. First, it was just the ceasefire, but then things continued to get even more crazier from Israel. Then it was ceasefire, arms embargo. And Kamala Harris, I think, could get some of those voters back if there was an arms embargo. But she won't do that. That's why I said she's moved on from them. And let's focus on what other groups that we can get, because she's not going to go against the Israeli lobby. That's just the reality, folks. So you see what's happening.
Very difficult conversation. I mean, how would you approach a resident who had lost 70, 80 plus family members and tell them, regardless of what you've lost, the choice is between two, and you must still cast your ballot one way or the other? It's not an easy conversation to have. Here's what I can tell you. For the last 20 years of my life, Arab Americans and Muslim Americans have made secondary the issues of foreign affairs. I can't tell you that between Bush, Obama, Trump, or Biden, that we have had alignment or agreement on their global policies. That's not been the case. What you're hearing now in this election that's different is, I have been the first to say, and I put so in my op-ed, the transformative policies of President Biden are likened to those of Lyndon B. Johnson or FDR. But a genocide outweighs all of this. The conflict we're speaking to is unprecedented. You're talking about 2.2 million people where 100% are displaced, where whether you're looking to the ministry, the health ministry numbers, or the Lancet Journal publication, the deaths are somewhere between 40,000 and 180,000, the majority of which are women and children, and 90% of civilian infrastructure has been decimated. The UN estimates place that it would take over a decade just to eliminate the rubble, and it would take multiple decades to rebuild. We see what's happening now in the West Bank, where the Al Jazeera offices have been shuttered for the next 45 days. We see the expansion of the war throughout Lebanon. And again, I'm getting phone calls from close, immediate family members saying they're trapped, or they have been killed, or they have been injured. And we're expected to say these issues are to fall secondary. And so I think the grace that has to be awarded to this community and this point of time is that this issue has to be as prioritized as those that I spoke to domestically.
Has the Harris campaign reached out to you? Or have you reached out to them?
There have been many conversations when we first started with the Biden administration, leading into with Harris campaign individuals. And we've expressed these points time and time again, that when it comes to this community, here are the things that they're looking for. At this point, it's beyond the ceasefire. We have to understand that Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet are not looking to end this conflict. He's looking to retain his political position within his government. And he's doing all he can to avoid a hostage deal, to bring all the hostages and prisoners home, and to allow unfettered access to humanitarian aid. You can't keep giving this tyrant access to all the weapons and bombs that we manufacture. An arms embargo needs to be imposed in order for us to bring him to the table, so we can put resolution to this conflict that's unfolding, and hopefully put forward a just solution in establishing a Palestinian state to end this conflict once and for all.
The former president, the current candidate, Republican candidate, is not an untested quantity. It's not a hypothetical. He's made it clear where he stands. I mean, here's a person who used Palestinian almost as a slur. I guess what I'm saying is it's a known quantity who's made it very clear that he stands solidly with Israel. I know that
So has Kamala. So has Kamala Harris. Do you get what they're doing? They're asking them, vote for the people who killed your people. Like, this is insane.
promised, and he has asserted that he will bring Middle East peace. He has asserted this. I know he's asserted this to constituents of yours in various ways, but his method of doing so, I find would not, I would venture to say, would not be pleasing to most of your constituents. And so then the question becomes, what if Mr. Trump wins and all the things that you have supported and worked for and care about are undone? How will you answer that?
Honey, Gaza is flattened. Gaza is flattened. Okay, Israel just did the largest land grab in the West Bank. What are you talking about? Nobody is stopping Israel from stealing homes in the West Bank, which is against international law. None of them are doing it. None of them are doing it. And they keep saying, Biden and Kamala, Israel has the right to defend itself, not in the West Bank. Hamas is not in the West Bank. They don't talk about the West Bank because then they have to admit the racist, supremacist ideology that exists with the state of Israel, that they support, that they back, because they're taking money from the Israeli lobby. That's why. How can you stand there? How can you stand there and point to your competitor and say your competitor is racist and da-da-da, and both of you support this racist, genocidal state? Both of you. There's no way. No freaking way.
I am doing all that I can to prevent Donald Trump from being reelected. And what I'm trying to do is use a platform that I have and urging the vice president to chart a new course on what's happening. Not because Dearborn residents are asking for it, not because Arab Americans and Muslim Americans are asking for it, because the center of the party that she represents, the center of this country, has moved on its issues. Whether it's an arms embargo, pursuing a ceasefire, ending the conflicts overseas, these are all things that everyday Americans are calling for. And so if we can uphold that value and heed the concerns of Americans from coast to coast, we can work collectively to rebuild the coalition to prevent the re-election of Donald Trump. But this is not about moving a constituency that is feeling deep pain. This is about moving a candidate who is seeking the highest office in the globe on issues of morality. And that is what we're trying to do in this moment of time. Obviously, elections start soon. And that's why we are urging with all the power that we have. That's why you see a muddied rollout from the uncommitted national movement on messaging, because we understand what Donald Trump represents. Nobody is here to debate that by any means. We understand that ultimately you have a binary choice come this November. But what is not binary is are the positions that are being taken right now overseas. And we have to usher in a new era to bring about just solutions to these decades-long conflicts. Without so, you're really losing people and leaving them behind at the wayside.
Before the point of
Yeah. So again, it's true. Like, they want people to just come out and vote for bathtub greens with no substance. And he said something there that is so eloquent. He said, it's not about trying to move the voters. It's about moving the presidential candidate. It's about moving Kamala Harris, because the reality is they're not going to waver on their demand for there to be an arms embargo and a ceasefire. Kamala Harris is the one who would have to move. So for all the people who are shaming, first of all, don't shame these people. For all the people who are shaming them for not wanting to support Kamala Harris, for all the people who are shaming those of us that are voting third party, because I'm like, fuck both these parties for reals. You shouldn't be mad at us. Your anger is misplaced. You should be upset with the administration at hand and what they are doing. And I can tell you one damn thing. As a Black woman, I know what that is like. I know what it is like. When I see these kids being killed in Gaza, when I see like Israel kicking people out of their homes, stealing their land, I understand it. Because some of those things were done to us. That would be like asking me, you want me to vote for the slave masters? I don't think so. I don't think so, fam. And what kills me is you have a Black woman there trying to push it. She's trying to push it. And it's just like, what are you doing? Instead of allowing having Christina Amanpour do her own damn show, because that's Christina's show. You can never reward an oppressor for oppression. Say it with me. You can never reward an oppressor for oppression. And you cannot reward the entity that is giving the oppressor the tools that they need to dismantle the people. Period. Brianna Joy Gray pointed it out. I am struck by the fact that Kamala could win the swing states necessary to win the election, but she also has little regard for Palestinian lives, that she'd rather lose the election than support a weapons embargo and end a genocide. And she's referring to this article here. Poll shows backing Israel arms embargo would help Harris in 3 swing states. I mean, it's common sense. Clara Green has questions. Clara is like, I truly think Kamala can win, but we are 40 days from the election day. The campaign seems to have only one strategy: digital. Not a single canvasser has knocked on my door. In Southwest Atlanta, hearing Dems are solely using volunteer canvassers right now, no paid. What is the plan here? So that's someone who wants to support Kamala Harris. Margaret says they've lost Georgia and have probably concluded that there's little value in spending money on the effort there. So I guess that's Margaret knowing a little bit more than the rest of us may know there. But this is a mess. I really do agree with Barack Obama when he said that there should be an open primary, and he wasn't ready to get behind just quickly endorsing Kamala Harris, because the reality is she is a part of the Biden administration. And when people talk about the genocide, you are going to be connected to that, especially your own statements recently don't help you. But the reality is they would have been better off having an open primary. Wait. Didn't people try to do that? I think people tried to do that. And the DNC said, no, there will be no primary. Joe Biden is the nominee. That's how they got here. So don't get mad at me.